The Smithsonian museums have been in the news recently because President Trump has authorized a review of the Smithsonian programs. I wanted to share with you a story that happened to me that may help you better understand why a review is a good idea. A few years ago, I was asked to write an article about women's voting rights for the Smithsonian. I chose to write about Susan B. Anthony. She was one of the loudest advocates for women gaining the right to vote. But when my article came back from the Smithsonian, they told me that I needed to describe her as a racist. And I was really stunned. I knew that she was also an abolitionist. She opposed slavery. And at the beginning of the Civil War, she gathered thousands of signatures from Americans calling on President Abraham Lincoln to abolish slavery. And so I really didn't see in her work and in her writings any racism. But what the Smithsonian was trying to emphasize was the fact that after the Civil War, Susan B. Anthony took money from Southern Democrats who'd come back into the Union. Well, why did she do that? Well, the women lost their battle for women's voting rights after the Civil War. Members of Congress then said, we'll take this up after we solve the Civil War. We will talk about women's voting rights. But that didn't happen. So the women had to start all over. They realized that they had to go to Southern states because they were going to have to make women's voting rights a state-by-state issue, which is why they took money from Southern Democrats who supported women's right to vote, but who had questionable views when it came to race, views that they did not share. I ended up pulling my name and my article from the Smithsonian because I could not in good conscience smear Susan B. Anthony as a racist. Then I decided to write a book about 8 Americans who were strong proponents of women's battle for the vote. The book is called Resilience on Parade, Short Stories of Suffragists and Women's Battle for the Vote. And the more I learned about Susan B. Anthony, the more convinced I became that she was far from a racist. She wasn't. And so I want to share with you a passage of something that she wrote that will help you see what her true views were on race and sex. She wrote, "Women and colored men are loyal, liberty-loving citizens, and we cannot believe that sex or complexion should be any ground for civil or political degradation. Against such outrage on the very name of a republic, we do and ever must protest." She went on to say, "We respectfully and earnestly pray that in restoring the foundations of our nationality, all discriminations on account of sex or race must be removed, and that our government must be Republican in fact as well as in form, a government by the people, by the whole people, and for the people, for the whole people." That, my friend, is not the voice of a racist. That is the voice of an American expressing Americanism, the belief that there should be no discrimination based on race or sex. I didn't publish my article, but I did bring to life Susan B. Anthony's story through a book. So I do think it's time to review the programming coming from our national museums to make sure that people are not being smeared for unjust reasons. Thanks for listening. I hope that this gives you something to think about. My book, Resilience on Parade, is available on Amazon. Thanks for watching. And as we get closer to America's 250th birthday, let's come together and let's celebrate America's 250th together.